I thought about naming this webinar something about the thyroid and, saying something like, thyroid education or thyroid 101 or something like that. And then I realized, and what comes to my awareness on a regular basis, and there's some health coaches here on with us right now, is that so many people in the world today don't really know where their symptoms are coming from and don't know, when something is going on, that it could be related to their thyroid or could be related to the things we're going to be talking about in this series, their adrenal glands or their sex hormones or something like that. So when titling this webinar, I wanted to touch on some pain points, and there are so many. As we go through this training, you're going to see how many things can actually be caused from, having a slow thyroid. So a couple things I'll get started with is it's 3:01 and people will probably just continue to kind of drip in. And for those of you listening to the replay, disclaimer here, this is just purely for education for you guys. I'm sharing information that I have learned over the years, as a person that has dealt with thyroid problems myself and went on a very long journey of trying to uncover what was wrong with me. So my story very briefly it starts with chronic pain. Not understanding what was going on with my body. It started out with chronic foot pain. It went to back pain. And the only way that I could explain to doctors what was going on was that I have this migrating pain that doesn't seem to land in one place, but has all kinds of different presentations. So that was my only symptom of thyroid dysfunction. It was the only thing that was wrong with me. And therefore, as you're going to learn as we begin here, and I will in a moment, is that it wasn't one of the most common side effects of someone who's dealing with thyroid problems. And so it was missed repeatedly over and over and over again that this could be the problem. So 10 years, 21 doctors, many, many, many modalities later, and a lot of investigative inquiry of my own, which led me to becoming a health coach. I then found out that it was Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis, which led to the hypothyroid diagnosis that I received. So when I say I have a history with understanding this condition and this problem and this gland and all of the things that go with it, know that it comes from the place that many of you are here from today. And that is the lay person's place, where you are not a medical professional or a health and wellness educator. You're just someone that maybe has had unknown symptoms and you don't know where they're coming from, or someone has said to you, maybe you should look at your thyroid, and you haven't gotten any answers, or maybe you even been to the doctor for your thyroid and they've told you that everything is normal. Well, you're in good hands here. You're in a good, safe space. Take what you like about this interview and take notes. The replay will go out, so you're going to get a copy of the replay. And just really think about the things that are going on within your body as you're listening to the training here. Because what I intend to do here is to give you, the empowerment, the instincts, the intuition to listen to yourself, to tap into the things that are going on within your body so that you can make a decision about what's happening with you. Something that no one taught me while I was on my own journey, and that, really led me down this path of trying to help, just the normal person out there that doesn't have medical knowledge to really be empowered to make decisions and learn what's going on with yourself. Okay. So if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A for me. There are no stupid questions, and hear me on this. We are all here to learn. I will probably learn some things today from some of you who might have been down this path as well. So again, please don't hold back thinking you're going to look stupid. We've all had questions before. We all have to start somewhere, and there is no judgment in this space whatsoever. So I'm going to pull up my screen in just one moment. I'll be sharing my screen. This is the actual guide that I wrote. It took me probably about a year after I discovered what was going on to really wrap my head around all of the things that I was told that were not true, and all of the things that many, I'll say about 80 to 90% of the conventional doctors that I saw, and probably 50 or 60 of the functional medicine doctors that I saw, had no idea about. So we're going to get started here. And again, I encourage you to ask questions and tell me in the chat. Let me know, are you somebody who has been diagnosed with thyroid problems by your doctor, or you're having symptoms and you really want to know if that's what's going on with you? Okay. So first and foremost, this is me. I'm here to guide you toward medical health and medical independence and freedom. I can be found on all of these little these channels right here: Carmen Hunter Health on Mighty Network, Seeking and Speaking Your Inner Truth, There are health coaches out there waiting to work with you. If you are someone who is not a health coach or health and wellness professional, we have board certified health coaches that are more than qualified to walk you through this journey. And then, of course, if you'd like to use your journey to become a health coach, we have that as well. So I'm not going to cover all of this, but just know this will go out with your replay, and you can find me in any of those channels. So we're going to start with the guide here. If you are interested in purchasing the guide will be sent out in the replay. And the front, we're in the middle of revamping the art on this. So if it looks different than what you're looking at here, bear with us. It's got some old labeling on it, but the content is the same. And we're making sure that the links are updated as well. So I'm just going to get started. Let me check real quick in the chat. Can you guys see this as what you guys can see my screen, right? And if you can just, someone can say, yep, in the chat, that would be great. Good. And let me change this to attendees and panelists so you guys can talk amongst yourselves. Thank you. Okay. And I'm seeing, yeah, Gisela had a hypothyroid for over 20 years. Tiffany had thyroid cancer and her thyroid removed in 2012. And then Kathleen is saying it was just diagnosed by a naturopath with Hashimoto's. Thyroid is so hard to understand. He put you on thyroid, NP, and progesterone, or you're unsure if you should take the meds. And I'm so glad I said your name right. Wonderful. Okay, Gisela. So this will hopefully help you to unravel some of the mystery around this gland. And, I thought, whoa, how am I ever going to understand all of this? This is so overwhelming. I'm not a doctor. Oh my gosh. At the time, I wasn't even a health coach. I was just someone trying to figure it all out. Okay. So we start with the most basic information. And just remember that I wrote this guide after I started coaching clients with this problem. So when I wrote the guide, it was with the intent of being really clear. And one of the things that was most confusing for people was where the thyroid gland actually even was. I couldn't understand, why doctors weren't just giving people this basic information. So the location of the thyroid and its function, and so I'm going to read through some of this, going to give you guys some dialogue and some information around it. I'm going to talk through some of this. I'm going to answer questions. So, hang on to some of your questions until we actually get started, and then we'll break and take a look at the Q&A. All right. So the thyroid gland is a vitally important hormonal gland that plays an essential role in metabolism, growth, and maturation of the human body. It helps to regulate many body functions and is constantly releasing a certain amount of hormones into the blood. Now, more hormones are produced when the body needs more energy in certain situations like growth, coldness, or pregnancy. So you guys, please don't get stuck on the word metabolism when it comes to talking about the thyroid. We're talking about metabolism of everything in the body. So we're not talking about just the idea that some people have about weight loss and things like that. It's not about a slow or fast metabolism when it comes to weight. We're talking about metabolism of everything in the body, metabolizing of everything. Okay. So the organ is located in the front part of the neck below the voice box and has the shape of a butterfly. So you guys will see that often when someone's teaching about thyroid, or there's a course or a book, it has a butterfly on it. And I'll show you in a picture in a moment, but the two side lobes on the right and the left are connected at the front by a narrow strip of tissue. The side lobes enclose the windpipe and at the ends and behind the windpipe. Okay. This is important information, especially if you've had your thyroid removed like Tiffany has. The thyroid gland uses iodine to convert T4 into T3. I'm going to go into detail about all of that. So don't be afraid of these words these acronyms you may not understand, by using a combination of tyrosine, which is an amino acid, and iodine, which creates T4 and T3. Now, within this guide, you see my cursor, we'll go over and you'll see that little hand pop up. Within the guide, there are links that go out to resources here and there. When I think it's important, I'll click on a link. We'll explore it a little bit if I need to make a point about something. But just know that there are links all throughout here that are resources that are going to take your learning and understanding further. Now, some people may say this isn't 101 because I'm sharing a lot of medical terminology and information, but I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible for you, while allowing those of you who are interested to deep dive to take things a lot further. Maybe you can understand some complicated things and you want the resources to do that. So there's information for both audiences here. So there's your thyroid, right? Right here, this gland right down here. So we've got the right thyroid gland, the left thyroid gland. It's really just one gland, and those are considered lobes, but the picture was really clear. And this little strip of tissue right here is called the isthmus. It's such a hard word to say, and I've always struggled with it. But I want you to think about these lobes as wrapping around that windpipe as they just explained it. So this is important for anyone who has said that had their thyroid removed or has been told they should, because it would make things easier to monitor your thyroid and things like that. Because what in reality, this thing is so intimately connected here that to the trachea, and that it is next to impossible to take all the tissue out without damaging something else. So when a doctor says, well, you have absolutely no thyroid gland left, that's not necessarily true. Okay. It's not necessarily true. There's going to be a little bit of tissue left somewhere in there. Okay. Which all thyroid tissue puts out hormone, unless it's so diseased and destroyed that it can't. So it's important for some people who have had their thyroid removed that are going on medication or on medication, and the doctor says, no, this will do everything for you. You may actually have a little bit of tissue left that is actually putting out thyroid hormone for you. Even if it's just a small amount, if it's still active, it's still healthy, it's still able to produce a little bit of thyroid hormone. That is because if they got too close, they could actually damage your windpipe. They could cause damage. Okay. So just know that that's not something a lot of doctors will tell you when you've had your thyroid taken out, or if they're thinking that you should have it taken out, or they're voicing that to you. Just know it's virtually impossible to take the entire thing out without causing damage somewhere else. So when we talk about a receptor for thyroid hormone on virtually every cell in the body, we can't say every single one. We're talking about if you don't produce enough hormone, your entire body can be affected. Hair, skin, nails, brain, body temperature, mood, gut function. I mean, just name it. So receptors we like to think about them as kind of a lock and key system, right? Or like a puzzle piece. They fit together. The receptor is waiting for the hormone, which is the key. So the receptor is waiting for the hormone, which would the key would resemble the hormone to fit into that receptor to send hormone into the cells to create healthy hair, skin, nails, brain function, body temperature, mood, gut function, etc. So I want you to think for one moment about what it would be like. And I've got something in my eye. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm totally distracted by getting poked in my eye by an eyelash. I'm so sorry. But what would it be like? It would be like to be lacking in that hormone in even just the smallest amount. So when we're looking at all of these functions that are affected, and someone says to you, oh, you don't have thyroid problems because your hair isn't falling out. Well, maybe, you're not able to regulate your body temperature, or maybe you're having some gut dysfunction. We cannot ever discount thyroid as being part of the problem just because you don't fit into the norm of symptoms. And that's what happened to me. Okay. So at the end of each chapter in this guide, if you guys choose to buy the guide, and it has all of these resources here. So everything is clickable. So I'm going to click on the Thyroid Madness link here. And I do have to scoot around because my little menu is in front of the guide here. So I have to forgive me if it takes me a moment. So this is one of the best resources you'll ever find for learning about the thyroid, in one of the first places that I went. It can be a little bit overwhelming. I actually had a session with Janie. I think it was probably 14 years ago or something like that. I had a session with her. And this, she referred me to her book, which I've got the book somewhere on my bookshelves. But I literally dove down the rabbit hole of this site and learned so much information and so many myths about what was going on with our thyroid. So this is kind of one of the first resources that I share with people. Like I said, it can be overwhelming. So this is another reason why, if you don't have a health coach and you want someone to be able to hold your hand through this process, this would be a really beneficial place for you guys to start in learning. So there's all kinds of amazing information in here: stories, audio, testimonials. But also up here, I want to bring attention to the toolbar at the top. Now, I caution people when they come to this site, because you can end up looking like this person in the middle here, where you're like, help me, Lord, this is too much. You can end up looking like this person over here scratching her head because you have thyroid brain fog. You could end up looking like this guy down here who's mad and angry because no one's ever helped you. Or you could be happy like this person that's like, I get it all. Okay. But again, take your time with it, bookmark it, and literally don't try to do it all at one time. But I want to show you, there are resources in here to find doctors. There are resources in here about all kinds of other things that are going on with the body as well. And also touching on some of these conditions. Now, the guide that we're covering today, and hold on a minute so I can go back to it, encompasses all of these things that you're going to find on these sites, but it's really shrunk down and focused and again, simplified. Okay. So Endocrine Web Information is a conventional resource for you, but they stay up to speed on a lot of this stuff. So, when you go there, don't get hung up on the conventional language. In other words, where they say medication is the only thing you can do. that kind of thing. Okay. Because there's so much more that you can do. Okay. So let's talk about what does the thyroid do? Why is it so important? So the first thing I like to say is this, is many times people blame their thyroid, right? I cannot tell you how many times my client said to me that, well, I have a weight problem because of my thyroid, or, oh, it's my thyroid is slow. Or you might even hear people say, oh, my adrenal glands, it's adrenal fatigue. That's what's wrong with me. So I want to challenge your thought processes here. And I want you to think about the thyroid as a messenger. And I want you to think about the adrenal glands as messengers, because they aren't actually the problem. So this is important not only for your understanding of the endocrine system and what goes on in the body, but also for your mindset as well. Because if we say that something is a problem, and I'm a big believer in energy and what we think we create and what is in our mind can happen in our bodies, it's very important that we have a good finger on the pulse of what we are in control of. You're in control of your thoughts, you're in control of your reactions. So when you think, oh, it's my thyroid, that's the problem, you're sending that message to your thyroid, and you're actually could be doing yourself more harm than good, because what we're doing is we're missing the reason the thyroid is sending the message, or we're missing the reason that the adrenal glands are sending the message. So some consider the thyroid the master regulator. Others see the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland as that master. They all work together. Okay. But one thing is certain, it is indeed our master metabolic regulator. So what does that mean in layman's terms? Like we've said, it's responsible for many metabolic systems, which means it plays a huge part in determining everything from hair and nail growth to depression and sex drive. It's hugely important for quality of life, and without it, we would not survive. That's why when people have a thyroid taken out, they are automatically given medication before they even leave the hospital, because you have to have it to survive. The hard part or the sad part is that most of the time they're given inadequate medication and not everything that they need to survive. Okay. So the importance of it for good health cannot be understated. And yet still today, and I wrote this guide, let's see, the first edition, I think was 2015 or 2016. And still today, it has become one of the most misunderstood and mistreated glands in medicine today. The only difference from when I wrote this guide, it might have even been in 2013, because I started teaching it back then. I can't remember. The only difference is that now you've got a million different thyroid trainings. I'm sure that you've seen so many people out there that say they can teach you about the thyroid, and there are so many skilled practitioners out there that can. So we have more people teaching about it, but we still need more people from the conventional standpoint understanding and helping people to understand this for themselves. So it's evidenced by the sheer amount of people going undiagnosed or improperly treated and still living with symptoms. So again, I'm reminding you, everything in here has links to take things further. So I want to make this note about thyroid symptoms. They should always be the driving force in thyroid care. So a piece of paper with normal labs means nothing in the presence of symptoms. So many doctors seem to think that a lab report tells the whole story about a person's health. It is an important part of diagnosing thyroid disease, but one of the biggest pieces from properly treating thyroid disease, one of the biggest pieces missing, is listening to the patient. So I coined this term, the paper versus the person syndrome. When a doctor trusts the labs more than they trust the patient, and the patient's symptoms get dismissed and their symptoms continue. That was me. And if you were a person that dealt with this was probably you too. Because again, I was told repeatedly, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay. So the thing is that there was something wrong with me. It just didn't match the narrative that they had going on in their literature about what could be happening. Okay. So I want to click here and take you out for a moment back to the Stop the Thyroid Madness. And I want to show you the possibilities of symptoms that are what's possible for people with thyroid issues. So I'll scroll slowly because you guys will all have access to this. I'm sure you've probably written this page down already, but these symptoms, you guys, go anywhere from energy levels. And again, look underneath each one of these: easily fatigued, feeling weak, nodding off easily, an inability to hold children for long, muscle weakness, sleep apnea, sleeping more hours than normal, mood and emotions, sadness, crying easier. How many times people diagnose me with depression, I can't even tell you. And I'm like, I am not depressed. I am in pain. Can you figure it out for me? Right? Who wouldn't get more irritated and down about if somebody not listening to them? So when you get on here, you're going to see that there isn't just hair loss and weight plateau as side effects, and edema, which is swelling, right? Like, swollen ankles and things like that, very common. All of these things are affected. So going back to the original beginning where we talked about, almost every cell in the body has a receptor for thyroid hormone. All of those receptors are hungry for thyroid hormone. If they don't get it, these are the symptoms that can present. Now, I don't know about you. Let's stay here for a moment on the cardiovascular, because this is one. And again, I could probably go through every single thing in here. As the years went on, again, 10 years, no diagnosis, I started to get all of these little things popping up in addition to pain. Low levels of vitamin B12, poor levels of vitamin D. I was diagnosed with mitral valve prolapse in my heart because I was having palpitations, and I had multiple tests done, where they did the stress test and they did the Holter test and all of that. When if we had known it was the thyroid, then someone could have said, oh, mitral valve prolapse actually is very common with people who have Hashimotos and thyroid problems. Maybe that's what's going on. Could have skipped a lot of things, you guys, a lot of things. Okay. So again, just scrolling down. People get stuck on hair loss, and they get stuck on weight loss and all of that, but look at all of these other problems, all of these other things that people are dealing with. So if you are a person that is dealing with any symptom that you have not been able to explain, this list right here might be able to help you. Now, don't get overwhelmed when you see it. Okay, don't get overwhelmed when you see it, because there are ways you're going to learn throughout this series on how we can narrow things down. Because as I have a section in this book, it's called Masters of Mimicry. If you think it's this thing, it could be this thing. Or if you were diagnosed with this thing, it may be this thing. So, Masters of Mimicry, lots of things mimic other things, right? So again, if you guys have any questions, put it in the Q&A. We covered the thyroid and where it's at, but this is where we kind of go a little bit deeper and noting the intimate connection, you guys. And there's that word that I'm pointing at the screen, like you can see me. My cursor is circling around the isthmus, that thin strip of tissue that connects them. So when a thyroid becomes inflamed because of thyroid hormone irregularities, you can actually press on the trachea. Again, look at that picture, another picture. Press on that trachea, making it difficult to breathe or creating a choking sensation. I had that too. Here's the other thing. Many people who are diagnosed think they're having a panic attack, because many times panic and anxiety can make you feel like, you've got swelling here, or GERD, like gastroesophageal reflux disease, when in reality, your thyroid could actually be swelling and causing this feeling of pressure. So again, you have anxiety. No, actually, I've just got this going on. I feel pretty good otherwise. No, it's anxiety. It's like, no, it's not that, right? So we have to be really, really careful when we are at, our doctor's appointments, or whoever it is that's helping us with this, that we stand up for ourselves, that we learn everything that we can, and we're able to speak intelligently about what could be happening in our thyroid. Okay. So here's another picture for you guys: location of the gland in relationship to other important parts of the body. And again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but this is so important. I've had hundreds of clients, and many of them have had a thyroidectomy. That's what that's called, when they remove the thyroid partially or entirely, that were told that they just needed medicine and things did not get better. Okay, this is really important. So I've included links within this guide to click through and find more information about what it means when some of the tissue can be left in the body because of fear of harming the windpipe or the trachea. Okay. So as we're going to discuss, and let's just look at that for just a second here. I want to make sure that you guys are noticing in this image right here, what thyroid cancer looks like these little nodules here. We're going to talk about nodules a little bit as we move through, because nodules can be common and normal. And I air quote normal, because what's normal for one person may not be normal for another one, but they can be common. But when people hear the word nodule, they automatically go into this panic mode where they think it's meaning cancer or something like that. So again, the goal here is to, help everybody take a deep breath around this topic, help you understand, give you some power here, teach you enough to take to your physician to learn more. But just know that, we're going to cover some of this stuff. So you can see a normal thyroid doesn't have any of those things, right? But these little nodules and little things on the lobes of the thyroid can be indicative of something more serious that needs to be checked out. And that is done. And we're going to talk about how that's done as well. Again, this is a 3-part series because we're going to go into all of these details. Okay. So as we'll be discussing, thyroid disease can originate from autoimmunity. So when a doctor tells a patient that the immune system will stop attacking after a thyroidectomy, it's important to note, if that one piece of tissue remains, an autoimmune attack can continue. So if you've had it taken out and the doctor says, well, you don't have an autoimmune condition because you don't have a thyroid, you shouldn't have symptoms. Not true. Okay. So there's a link right here that'll take you further on understanding how important all of that is. All right. Autoimmunity and the types of thyroid disease. So let me take a drink of water so I don't go into a coughing fit here. And it looks like the rain's going to go right over us, I hope. So the two most common types of thyroid disease are Graves, which, and again, there's a link here, links everywhere, which is autoimmune hyperthyroidism, and Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune hypothyroidism. So hyperthyroidism, overactive thyroid, hypothyroidism, underactive thyroid. Okay. Hypothyroidism, again, normally commonly caused by Hashimoto's. Now, these two conditions have opposite hormonal responses in the body, but many times a person can have parallel symptoms. In fact, a person can even have both at the same time, which I was told wasn't true. And I'm like, but there has to be a reason that I'm experiencing both of these things at the same time. And I was on what was some people would call like a roller coaster. One minute it was this way and another minute it was that way, which made things a lot more confusing. So the autoimmune process can be developing for years before rearing its ugly head. And, for more information, I've got a link there, but I want to say this too. As you're going to learn, you don't just 1 week you're fine and the next week you're overweight and miserable. That's not how this works. It's just like any other disease or problem or, something that we're diagnosed with. It doesn't happen overnight. These things are cumulative. So if you're living in a toxic environment, or you're being exposed to toxic thoughts, toxic ingredients in your food, things sprayed on the lawn, all of those things we're going to go over can affect the thyroid. Okay. One of the things that when I think back on where did this originate from me, we're going to talk about familial and genetic predisposition as well. My own particular story was my mom had thyroid problems. My grandmother had thyroid problems, even though she'll lie to you and tell you she didn't. We know she did. She was like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not doing any of that business, but she was diagnosed. So, it goes down the chain. Most of the time it's women that are affected. So when there is a genetic predisposition, I want everyone to understand, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the problem. Okay. It just means that if you trip that genetic expression, and you do something or something happens in your life to trigger that, then the autoimmune process can show up. Okay. So it doesn't mean just because your mom's mom and her mom all had the problem, just like with high cholesterol and blood pressure, doesn't mean you're going to have it. You can avoid all of this. Okay. And so if you're a health coach, so can your clients. So just know that we have control over so much that happens to our bodies. So for more information about T helper cells and how the immune system can be dominant on either side, you can take your learning further. We're not going to go into TH1 and TH2 learning. And in the formatting of this, it depends on how you open it. I've got blank spaces in mine because I've got it open on a different PDF platform than my normal one. So just bear with me on that. All right. So an autoimmune attack is an abnormal immune response to a body part. Okay. It's that simple. The body stimulates T helper cells, which stimulates the B cells, which make antibodies that attack the thyroid. And in other autoimmune processes, other body parts can be the target. So for example, if you know someone that's got rheumatoid arthritis, when this happens, then the body goes straight to the joints and start to attack the joints. Same thing with the, irritable bowel problems. So ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, anything. There are hundreds of autoimmune diseases out there. So in order for autoimmunity to express, it can have a genetic component or a trigger or both, right? So we'll cover triggers in depth as we go along. There's more information on the end of the autoimmunity chapter to take your learning further as well. But again, I want to also say this is that, and this is just kind of a heads up, it has been said that once a person has one autoimmune disease, and Hashimoto's is the most common, the chances of getting another one are very high. That is one reason it is so important to understand that thyroid disease is most likely originating from an autoimmune attack, and treating the thyroid alone will not stop the attack. So that is where the problem of doctors giving medication, which is just a Band-Aid, For a thyroid problem, it becomes a very big problem, because just handing someone medication or taking the thyroid out doesn't actually fix, where did this come from? Why is it happening? How do we get to the bottom of the problem? Okay. All right. And so many people, find an autoimmune paleo style diet works for them to figure out exactly what's causing the immune system to hyper respond. There's a couple of diets that you can look into here, but I want to share a word of caution as well. Many people think that, going strict vegetarian is going to be a great idea if you have a thyroid problem, because that'll lower inflammation and it'll get everything back on track. But it is absolutely imperative that you understand how much food affects your body and how important it is that you have the building blocks and the healthy foundation for the ability and the pathway to heal. Okay. So when I say healing doesn't mean like I'm out here going, you're going to heal from this and you're going to be fixed from this. Healing looks like it's something different for everyone. For me, 23 years of not eating red meat and pork, I believe, was part of my problem, not necessarily the pork part, but not eating red meat, because I was in such a state of iron deficiency. And as you'll see when we get into the iron conversation, that I don't believe that I was able to even significantly make enough or have enough thyroid hormone to be healthy. And that was a period of 23 years as time went on. Add in crazy lifestyle, making really bad decisions, having some traumatic experiences and toxic thinking, and all the stress and all the crazy things that were going on with my life before I became a health coach. I think I probably tripped that trigger wire more in more ways than most people do. Okay. So full transparency here, but you guys, we have the ability to have a healthier life and to feel better if we do the work to understand what's going on and where we are and how it happened. But the thing is that you have to be willing to look at the things in your life that are no longer working for you, that could be causing the autoimmune experience or trigger to happen. Okay. So there's some resources on autoimmunity there. Let me see here. I want to click right here for just a moment and share this. Yes, allow. So this is kind of a list of the autoimmune conditions that are out there. There are more than 100 autoimmune diseases. Okay, so I was probably diagnosed with about maybe 15 or 20 of these, even though I had no positive testing for any of them. It was because they couldn't figure it out. So even with, let's see here. We've got, mixed connective tissue. We've got multiple sclerosis. So I'll tell you real quickly, this is let me close this. The extent that my, I guess I would have to say negligence on the doctor's part that I had seen in many of the practices. They actually wanted to diagnose me with multiple sclerosis and wanted to do a spinal tap with absolutely no other symptoms other than I was having tingling in my toes and my fingers. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. First and foremost, I didn't want a needle in my back because I'm deathly afraid of needles and hate them. So they ended up sending a nurse over to my house who did an IV drip of a specific medication and told me, if this medication works, then we're going to positively diagnose you with multiple sclerosis. So that is the extent that I went to when trying to understand what was wrong, I actually went through the treatment that they would put a multiple sclerosis person through with absolutely no relief. So they said, oh, well, then you don't have that. So can you even imagine, you guys, people who don't have any idea what could be happening, trying to make medical decisions for themselves based on just hearing from a conventional, medical doctor, you should do this and that'll answer that, right? So just more reasons for us to be empowered. Okay. No questions from anybody yet. All right. I'm watching the Q&A up there. Okay, so Graves' disease is considered an autoimmune disease and is the most common form, as I mentioned, of hyperthyroidism. So this can sometimes be considered more urgent of the two because of the increased metabolic rate, which can cause palpitations, arrhythmias, etc. And that was one of the first things I was told, like, oh my gosh, you have Graves, because I was having the mitral valve prolapse palpitations, which I did not have Graves. I had a negative TSI test, which we get into testing later on in this training. But I was told that, which then set off this panic, which made me go, oh my gosh. And so you guys, we have to take, anything that we're hearing when we go in with specific symptoms, we got to take it with a grain of salt until we do some deeper digging and investigating into what else could be going on. Okay. So one of the reasons why it's a little bit more urgent here is because it does affect the heart. Okay. So other causes of hyperthyroidism can be a toxic nodular or multinodular goiter. Again, those so-called scary words, nodes, like little nodules. So toxic nodular, multinodular goiter. So learning more about nodules, we've got a link there to take you further with that. But when it comes to the symptoms that can come with Graves, we're talking about anxiety, bulging eyes from pressure, sleeplessness, significant weight loss very quickly, nervousness, diarrhea, and loose stools. Because remember, the gut is affected, sweating, fatigue, the palpitations we just talked about. And, I want to say this too, many times when I'd be working with clients, they'd say, why can't I have the weight loss form of the thyroid problem? There is no good thyroid problem. Okay. Too many times people are getting stuck on the idea that if they, that weight gain or being overweight is the problem. That is not the problem. The problem is that your thyroid is giving you messages that your body isn't functioning properly. And we need to find out why that's happening. You wouldn't want Graves any more than you would want Hashimotos. I promise you, I've worked with people that have had both. Neither one of them are good. Neither one of them both of them can bring about a great anxiety. So here's a picture of somebody, and maybe you have someone in your life, or this has been you, or you know somebody that has had hyperthyroidism. I can pick a hyperthyroid person out in public in a snap of a finger, two ways: one, the bulging eyes, and one, the swollen neck. And I have actually seen someone whose thyroid was so swollen you could almost see the lobes on the side of the trachea there. Okay, so enlarged thyroid gland and a normal thyroid gland. And there's also a test out there. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in this guide because I haven't looked at it in a while, but there's a swallow test that that I learned about when you are suspicious of, having a thyroid problem, that you get a glass of water and you tip your head back and you swallow the water, and you can literally see, if the gland bulges out too much, if there's a great deal of swelling, you can actually see the pressure and the way that the gland shows in the neck. If you have symptoms along with that, that's a good reason to go get your thyroid checked. Okay. So lots of resources here on Graves' disease. And one thing that, is actually shown to naturally slow the thyroid down is to drink and eat raw goitrogenic vegetables. Goitrogenic or cruciferous, both of those words lead to this, and what I call the stinky vegetables. So cruciferous and goitrogenic vegetables are things like cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all the things that stink when you cook them. And it has been shown that people who have a hyperactive thyroid have been able to slow it down. They have goitrogenic properties, which means that I don't know how, and I mean, you can find out more about that. And there are links within here that will show you how it actually affects the thyroid and can slow down that metabolic behavior. And help the hyperthyroid or the hyperactive thyroid slow down just a little bit while you're getting the support that you need. It is not a cure. Okay. So it's just a suggestion. So Graves' disease owes its name to the Irish physician, Robert James Graves, who discovered this condition in 1835. Classically comprises hyperthyroidism with a diffuse goiter, eye disease characterized by inflammation and involvement of the orbital structures, you guys, thus the bulging. Dermopathy, referred to as pretibial myxedema, and rare involvement of the nails, fingers, and long bones, known as acropathy. I don't think I'm saying that right, acropathy. Prior to its description by Graves, others, including the Greek philosophers Aristotle and the English physician Caleb Perry, had noted unique aspects of this condition. You guys, we can go back in history and find so many stories about the things that people are dealing with today, but it's so few and far between compared to what we're seeing today. I mean, being somebody from the future and looking back at how sick our society is today and where it's coming from, I mean, it will be shocking. So sadly, we're going to talk about Hashimoto's for a moment, which is what I was eventually diagnosed with. And the labs proved that I had high antibodies for Hashimoto's. Sadly, 90% or more people with hypothyroidism are producing antibodies to thyroid tissue, but not everyone is being tested for it. So that was the problem for me. They would test my TSH, but they would not test me, thyroid stimulating hormone. They would not test me for the antibodies, which would have picked this thing up, probably 9.5 years before the 10 years that it took for me to be diagnosed. So this is what is causing the immune system to attack and eventually destroy the thyroid, which over time causes a decline in thyroid hormone levels, leading to lifelong dependency on exogenous or outside the body hormone supplementation. So Hashimoto's is one of the most common autoimmune disorders in the United States, and it affects somewhere between 7 to 8% of the population. Not everyone with Hashimoto's has hypothyroid symptoms. Even though thyroid antibodies have been found to be a predictable marker for future thyroid disease, you can still be positive for Hashimoto's without elevated antibodies. So just keep that in mind, that just because you've been tested and it comes up negative for Hashimoto's doesn't mean that you don't have it. So you're like, well, what's the point? Well, you could be negative 1 week and it just, the cup hasn't spilled over yet. And then next week, the antibodies start to rise and show up. So any activity in the antibodies testing is indicative that there is, Hashimoto's activity happening, and it is worth exploring. Okay. So again, those common symptoms: dry hair and nails, loss of the outer third of the eyebrows. That's another indication. So we're talking about the outside of the eyebrows. If you see someone whose eyebrows basically kind of stop right here, this outer third with no hair growth is a good indication. Cold hands and feet, which, that was one of my my symptoms, was cold feet as the years went on. And my ex-husband would always be like, oh my God, can you please put some socks on? Because I would be seeking out heat with my feet in the night and wouldn't even know it. That's how cold my feet were. Depression, joint pain, and weight gain. So joint pain, I added in here because that was my main complaint, which no one ever seemed to get. And everyone would always tell me, well, you're not heavy enough. You don't have a weight problem, so it can't be thyroid. So, again, you guys, never let anyone tell you that you're fine if you don't feel fine. You should always, always listen to the patient, to the person, rather than to the paper. Okay. Because labs can share, they can give you a lot of great information, but they aren't always going to give you all of the information. So lots of resources on Hashimoto's here. My dear friend, Stacey Robbins wrote the book, You're Not Crazy and You're Not Alone. And then one of my friends, Isabella Wentz, wrote the book Hashimoto's Root Cause. And they're both great resources, but lots of resources everywhere on the internet. You can go down that rabbit hole and find a lot. So the intention here is to just kind of keep you focused on some things to get you started so you don't get too overwhelmed. Okay. Now, people with Hashimoto's should probably do the opposite of Graves' patients with goitrogens. Eating them raw has been shown to slow the thyroid down. Some people say that's not true. But, I would err on the side of caution. If it shows that it can slow the thyroid down for people with hyperthyroidism, then it probably does the same for hypothyroidism. And that's the last thing we want because it's already slow, right? So cooking them removes about 90% of those goitrogenic chemicals, and they can safely be eaten post-cooking as long as you tolerate them. All right. Many doctors don't believe in testing antibodies. They don't believe it's important because they say, well, what's the point? Who cares? We're going to treat you the same anyway. The mentality on that comes from having very little training on the way that our food, our lifestyle, and all of the things that happen to us, and our thoughts and exercise, how they impact thyroid health. So they just end up trying to manage the symptoms through medication instead of getting to the reason they have the autoimmunity in the first place. So this is where, and just not because I'm a health coach, but because I believe in health coaching so much, because if I'd had a health coach or someone that understood this helping me in the very beginning, I probably wouldn't have gotten to the place where I had marbleization of the thyroid, multiple nodules on the thyroid, and then, was put on many different kinds of medication, multiple medications that did not work, and so on. It is a roller coaster ride if you're on it by yourself. So I encourage everyone to consider having a partner in the journey if you think this is what's going on with you. Okay. Digging into the triggers and finding out why the thyroid is being attacked can help the patient slow or even stop the attack. That is absolute fact, you guys. And one of the things that I had to work really hard on moving past, because I was very bitter and frustrated when I found this out, because I was a person that was interested in, taking charge and solving my own problems. I wanted to be a part of my own solution, and no one knew how to get me there. So had to do a lot of moving on past that. Right. So let's talk about doctors and important labs. And we've got about probably 13 or 14 minutes left here. So again, put your questions in the Q&A if you have any. A person with thyroid disease should be able to go to the doctor and get the labs they need, right? That's what we go there for. So hold on a moment. We assume the doctor automatically knows what labs to order to see what's going on, correct? Well, this is seldom, if ever, the truth. The standard list of labs that a conventional doctor orders are typically and woefully inadequate. This chapter is going to explore how to find a doctor, what labs are the most effective at diagnosing thyroid issues, where to get the labs, and some unconventional methods of testing that can be done at home. Sometimes a patient can be lucky enough to find a doctor who orders the correct labs the first time around. So to me, this demonstrates the desire to go the extra mile for the patient. And, I will have to say it is, sometimes it's all about how you ask. And early on in this journey, it was me just saying, just order anything. I don't care what it is. And doctors would say, well, we're going to start with these labs that I'm comfortable with, and then we'll move into the things that we may need to do after that. And so those were things like this. Gold standard labs ordered by doctors to assess thyroid health are as follows: TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone; total T4 thyroxine. So anyone who is actually taking thyroid medication will recognize this word more than anything. Thyroxine, or T4, okay, is the medication that most people are given when they are diagnosed with hypothyroidism. The problem is, and as I teach, and I'm going to share with you how this all works, the problem is that that's not the only thyroid hormone that somebody needs to have a healthy body, okay, to have a healthy metabolic system here. They have to have T3, triiodothyronine, okay, which is the other thyroid hormone. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there's more than 4 actually, but we're going to talk about the main hormones that are missed here. So when they run these total T4s and total T3s, they're looking at the total amount of thyroid hormone in the body, not what's bioavailable in the bloodstream for the receptors to take in and use. So let me repeat that, because we're going to talk about the adequate testing in a moment, but I want you to think about this. So if you've seen these labs on your own, reports, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, they say it's the gold standard. It's not. Okay. It tells you what's going on between the pituitary gland and the thyroid. Are they talking to each other? If they are, how much? What are they saying? But it doesn't tell you how much hormone is in your blood to get into those receptors. Remember the lock and key. So receptors on the eyelashes, receptors on the hair, receptors on the sex organs, receptors on the skin, receptors on the brain, the receptors all over your body are waiting for T4 and T3 to do their job, where T3 turns into energy and gets into your body. But if we don't know how much you have, then doctors don't know how much to give you. And the only way to do that is to look at the right lab. So there's a few reasons that they don't look beyond these labs. And one is because they haven't been trained to. It's also because they worry that insurance won't cover the labs because they assume they're not the norm for testing, and they don't want to be left with the bill, right? So lastly, they may not know how to interpret them or treat according to the results. So just easier to continue with the status quo and keep prescribing a medication that may or may not do the job. So I want to say this too. Many people, we all know people, or maybe you've been someone who has gone to your doctor and said, feeling a little bit down. You've gone to your general practitioner. General practitioner says, sounds like you need an antidepressant, or it sounds like you need a Effexor or Wellbutrin or something like that. They give you an antidepressant, they send you on your way, but they have no idea why you're feeling the way you are, how this affects your gut, how this affects your brain, or that even, the neurotransmitter of serotonin is mainly made in your gut. So they give a pill and they send you on your way. That's the same thing with general practitioners and the thyroid. They are not trained in all of these things that we wish they were, right, in the endocrine system. So they're going to just say, okay, sounds like a synthroid thing. Here's your prescription. And they send you on your way. The other side of it is this. Well, then just go to an endocrinologist. Well, I've had 1, 2, 3. I think I topped out at 4 endocrinologists, and none of them, not one of them. And I went to some of the best places in Atlanta, Vanderbilt, Nashville, had any idea how food and lifestyle actually triggered the genetic expression of Hashimotos, and how, what kind of medication I needed to be able to get back to, a healthy state in my body and mind. Nobody. So you guys, we can't just say that somebody knows what's best for us just because they carry a title. You got to do the work for yourself and get support from someone who understands. Right. So the worst part of this is a person with obvious symptoms of thyroid disease can go undiagnosed for years while their thyroid continues to suffer the attack, which ultimately, again, destroys the thyroid and leaves the person dependent on medication for life. Okay. So resources for why conventional labs are usually inadequate. So here's, just some more information to read about where I came up with this and how I understand this. And again, once you go out and go down one rabbit hole, you're going to find yourself with resources and references at the bottoms of these sites that can take you even further into PubMed and NIH and all of these articles about these particular topics. Okay. So, but one thing I want to give, some kudos to the functional world here, because the good news is that not all doctors are getting it wrong. And there are many, now there are more than ever, even when I wrote this book the first time, functional medical doctors, naturopaths, conventional doctors, health coaches, but they're taking medicine in a more progressive and less reactive direction. This is very hopeful for people with chronic conditions like thyroid disease, because it allows the patient to be evaluated as a whole person, which is so important, because if we just treat this, then we're forgetting all of this. So when this doesn't feel good, we go, what's wrong with this? Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? So, okay. So approaching the mind body as a whole is what it takes to live optimally. And many people switch from conventional endocrinologists and naturopaths to naturopaths or functional doctors after years of not feeling well, but you shouldn't have to go 2, 3, 4, 10 years of not feeling well to get the help that you need, with minimal invasiveness and medications, to learn all, how the thyroid affects all aspects of life and everything. All right. So we have a link here that takes you out how to find a functional medicine doctor and so on. So I want to say this too, that even though there's a lot of conversation here about working with your doctor and finding a doctor and all of those things, I have to keep going back to this. It is going to be up to you to advocate for yourself, to learn everything that you need to know, to be completely prepared to walk into that appointment with the doctor and know what you're talking about, or you will walk out with a prescription for something that may or may not work, with very little input or information, probably a big long list of labs that you may or may not need, and then an appointment 4 to 6 to 8 weeks later. And that means that you're going to be going through all of the things, right? Still dealing with the hair loss, still dealing with the weight gain, still dealing with fatigue, wondering what the labs are going to say, probably developing some anxiety. So again, this is where health coaches pop in, and they support you through the process, can help you feel calm and relaxed about the conversation, and maybe even go to the doctor with you to support you. So what labs should we be getting? We'll cover this part and then we'll wrap up. I'll look at the Q&A before we finish with part 1. But while it's a matter of opinion and sometimes education, what labs are necessary, I am firm in my belief that we cannot see the whole picture of how someone with thyroid symptoms is functioning without the following labs. TSH is important, helps us to see what's going on, again, between the pituitary gland and the thyroid. Free T4, remember what I said earlier about total T4 only showing what's in the body, what the total thyroxine hormone is in the body. But what's free and available for your receptors is going to be best measured by free T4 and free T3, which is what T4 actually turns into. And we're going to do a little bit of next time we meet. I'm going to actually, I'm going to actually do this right now. Let's do this now. I want you guys to have a good understanding. So I'll throw this in today instead of next time. But if you got a piece of paper and a pen in front of you, or you're good with visualization, I just want you to draw an arrow and that points to the right. So an arrow that points to the right. Okay. I'll do this really big so you guys can see it, because this is going to be helpful for you to get a visual. Sorry, I got to get a pen here that's thick enough for you guys to see. How about a magic marker? Come on, marker. Okay. So while you're grabbing your paper and pen, I'm going to make a little chart here so you guys can see it. And hope this will be big enough for you. Okay. So, and I can't write backwards, so I hope this translates. Can you see that? It says T4 right here. So draw an arrow. This helps solidify it for you. And put T4 at the end of that arrow there. Okay. Then at the other end of the arrow, I want you to write T3. Well, you know what? Let's put an F in front of that T and an F in front of that other T. So at the end, you have FT3, free T3, free T4, and then at the other end, free T3. Free T4 is your storage hormone, okay, your thyroxine. T4, in order for your body to get into the hormone, the thyroid hormone, into the receptors, this has to convert into this, okay? So free T3 is the fuel that your body needs to get into those receptors to give you the energy, again, the fuel that your body needs to grow hair, to have a healthy brain, to lose weight, to have healthy skin and strong fingernails and a healthy mind and sleep well and all of those things. Yeah, and we're going to get into when it is a problem, when free T4 or when T4 doesn't turn into T3, free T3, to get into the receptors. We're going to talk about what can stop that from happening. So in your mind, I want you guys to remember, when you're just given T4 as a pill, a prescription, and you're unable to turn that into the fuel that you need, we're going to go into more detail, so don't worry, then your receptors are not uptaking that thyroid hormone that you need to be healthy. Can you guys give me a little feedback and let me know if that was clear? Drop in the chat and tell me if it was clear how I explain that, okay? Because the goal here is for you guys to walk away empowered and knowledgeable about what's really going on with this, okay? So real important, T4 has to turn into T3 to be turned into the fuel that your body needs to get into those receptors to help you grow your hair, have a healthy sex life, to have a good metabolism, and to get rid of the brain fog and all the good stuff, okay? And I'll look at that chat in just a moment. So another lab that we want to make sure that we're tested for, which is what I was telling you guys earlier, was missed over and over for me and hundreds of my clients, TPO and TGAB antibodies, okay? So we'll go into that a little bit more on the next call about what that is and what those are, but these are proteins, okay? So when those antibodies are elevated and there's activity, that means that there is something happening with the immune system, okay? Reverse T3, which is that form of T3 right there, only going the other way, which can show inflammation, TBG and TSI if Graves is suspected. And then of course the ultrasound, which you guys see the picture here. So every other year I get an ultrasound. I'm behind right now because I moved and I still don't even have a general practitioner. But an ultrasound is a scan, as you're seeing here, that they do on the thyroid to check for nodules, to see if there's anything concerning that anybody can see. And if there are, if there are nodules on there that are, unnecessarily large, or there's too many of them, or, look toxic or suspicious, then they'll take testing further and they'll do a biopsy of that nodule. Okay. But I absolutely recommend anyone who has any thyroid diagnosis whatsoever to get hold on a moment, I'm being spammed here as we're on this call. Hold on a moment. I don't know why that's doing that. Sorry about that, guys. But it is imperative to be able to take a peek at that thyroid. And I've had one every year up until about 2 years ago. So that's why I'm behind right now, just to kind of keep an eye on it, just to kind of see what's going on there. Are the nodules shrinking? Are they growing? Are there more of them? Is there anything to be concerned about? Okay. So hormone balance is complex. It requires a nutritionally balanced diet, hormone balance, stress management, other factors. There may be restrictions on your doctor to do that full battery of thyroid tests. And if that's the case, consult an anti-aging, metabolic, or functional medicine physician to help you get to the root cause of your issues and find a natural approach. That's from selfgrowth.com. So we'll have this guide cleaned up and everything will be in order next time we meet, which is next Wednesday. And then we're going to start right here. What do you do with the lab results? What to do once you receive them, more about what they mean, and any of those things. Okay. So we're going to stop right here because we're at the hour and it looks like we're, this is a 3-part series and we're on page 24. There's 66 pages. So it's a good place to stop. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to check the questions and I'm going to check the chat. Carrie says, my daughter has very low ferritin. She gets lightheaded when she stands up. Is this a thyroid symptom or just low iron? So it absolutely can be a symptom of thyroid, because again, everything is affected. Everything in the body is affected by thyroid hormone, right? Blood pressure, iron actually is one of the things that I was mentioning earlier. If we have too low iron, then we may not have sufficient thyroid function. So if she's lightheaded when she stands up, it also could be a blood sugar thing, right? So one of the first things that I would suggest looking into is, if you have a glucometer at home, I would check blood sugar when this is happening. Is her blood sugar low? Checking her morning blood sugar, and then postprandial, which is 2 hours after eating. Make sure she has a good regulated blood sugar. Also, what you can do also is get a blood pressure cuff. and you can check blood pressure, because a lot of things can cause lightheadedness in addition to that. So low iron, low blood pressure, low blood sugar, things like that. If she has low ferritin, that means her storage iron is low, which means, and I'm going to go into the whole thing about iron and give you a full panel of iron labs to get. I think that's on our next call potentially. But having all of those labs tested, and then if she is curious, if she's not a meat eater, or if she is a meat eater, then I would probably encourage her to maybe have a half an orange or have some vitamin C while she's increasing her red meat to help that iron go up. And if she's not a meat eater, then definitely needs to be looking at supplementation for that. Something that won't constipate. There's a product out there called Floradix, Floradix, I believe, that will not cause constipation, which is a big problem for people who take iron supplements. So yeah, so the long answer to that is it could be a thyroid symptom, and it could be the thyroid symptom could be caused by low iron. So I hope that's helpful. So let me take a look at the chat and see if you guys are talking about anything else here. Yeah, Gisela said, again, she's had it for over 20 years. I probably have too, but was diagnosed in 2005, I think, after my son was born. Let's see here, Hashimoto's, yep, multinodular goiter, me too, Jane, that was me too. Very difficult to keep your core body temperature up. And that's a good point. So, one of the side effects of hyperthyroidism is sweating. And one of the side effects for me as time continued to go on without a diagnosis was I couldn't sweat. I mean, I was literally going out and it would be like 98 degrees. I'd be going for a walk and I would be dry as a bone, and everyone else around me would be just dripping sweat. And I was a personal trainer at one point, and it was one of my keys that something was going on where I was slowing down, was because I wasn't sweating. So that is also something to keep in mind. Let's see here. I don't know why I keep taking those off. I can't read without them. Kathleen said, I thought it was anxiety. Let's see here. I'll look forward to the replay, Kathleen. She was probably talking about the swelling in her throat. Yeah, Tiffany, mine too. I actually told one of them that, I would never refer anyone to her, and what a great disservice she had given me, because she told me that I would be she said, literally, your thyroid's going to die. You're going to need medicine for the rest of your life. And food has nothing to do with it. And I was just sitting there like, okay. She was the last endocrinologist I ever went to. Okay. So very clear and helpful. Thank you, Carol, for that. I appreciate that. Yes, Dr. LaJoy. So Dr. LaJoy is definitely clear. Never heard that before. I'm not sure which piece you're talking about, but wonderful. I'm so glad it's clear. We're going to, thyroid binding globulin, one of the proteins that binds to thyroid hormone, as Tiffany is explaining. Yes. And Dr. LaJoy says, yes, I'd love to be on your show. Absolutely. So you can email me, Dr. LaJoy Brookshire. You can email me at carmenhunter@protonmail.com. I'm so happy to do interviews on this, and have been. Actually was on Isabella Wentz's documentary about the thyroid, because my story was just, it was crazy. How I slipped through the cracks, 21 doctors, 10 years, no diagnosis. And it took being an advocate for my own health to be able to figure that out. So I'd love to share that story in hopes I could help others. Yes. Sluggish recently, adrenals have been sluggish, Dee says, and a lot of hair loss. Okay. Thank you for putting that in there on Floradix, or liquid herbal iron. Yeah, Dee, you're not alone. And again, remember this, that the adrenals are slowing down and the hair is falling out because there's something else going on. So one of my favorite things to tell people is that a diagnosis is just a symptom. Okay. So again, I'm not a doctor, don't trust me, trust yourself. That's what I always tell people. Don't trust me. Don't trust your doctor, trust yourself first. But when we say that I've been diagnosed with this, then we're really kind of giving ourselves sometimes permission to not go after what this is. So we can say, oh, it's my thyroid. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. Oh, it's my thyroid. That's why I'm fat. Okay, well, are you happy with being, more overweight than is comfortable? Because then you can just keep blaming the thyroid instead of going after why. And I've been known to be a bit of a tough love person, because for me, if I'd be remiss to not encourage you to go after the reason something's happening. You shouldn't be just happy with just taking a pill for the rest of your life, when there is potential for you to either reverse or fix, or to whatever heal looks like for you, right? Healing is different for all of us. For me, I considered myself healed when I finally was able to say, oh, this is what's going on. And these are the things that I can do to be healthier and to manage, what's going on, what these symptoms are. So, just remember, repeat the email. Yes, it's Carmen Hunter at protonmail.com, PROTON mail.com. So, and I'll check spam because it's a very secure mail. I've moved to that since 2020 happened. So yeah, I'll keep my eyes open for that. Or you can also email support@carmenhunterhealth.com. That might be easier to remember, and it goes through a secure server online. So just know that, you guys, that there is always hope for feeling better, but you have to take your own health into your own hands. You have to be able to, and it's hard. It can be really hard. I mean, there have been times, or there were times back when things were at their worst, where I would be working, and, I was a president of the Humane Society at the time, and I was raising my son. I wasn't even like a full blown working at the time. And I would be so tired, I could not even finish what I was doing. So I would go nap with my son. We need to honor the things that our body is asking us to do. So even if you've got all the pressures of something else going on over here, if you're dealing with thyroid stuff and you've got symptoms of, your adrenals are telling you to slow down, or your thyroid is telling you to slow down, we have to listen to that. And we're going to cover a lot of information about what you could be doing to make these symptoms worse and better, so that you feel more empowered as well. Okay. So, Dr. LaJoyce, did you get that email? I want to make sure that you were able to get that. And you're welcome, Carol, for answering your questions. And that's what this is for. I am here to answer questions and help guide you guys in a way that feels good to you, that you don't feel so overwhelmed. Jennifer says, can you alternate between hyper and hypo, being cold and excessive sweating at different times? 100%. And this is where I think it's going to be helpful to know that you can have Graves and Hashimoto's at the same time. That can be happening together. And that's one of the things that can be so confusing. But as we move forward to the training, and I think it's week 3, we're going to cover the Masters of Mimicry. It might even be next week. I don't know. I'm going to be working on the guide for the rest of this week to kind of clean it up and get it ready. But the Masters of Mimicry are is if you've got low iron, it can present as low thyroid. If you've got high estrogen dominance, it can present as low thyroid or low adrenals. If your adrenals are sluggish and trying to give you a message, you could blame the estrogen. There are so many things that can interact and cross over, that it's really important that we explore all of them. And we do this in a way that's underwhelming. The goal is to not feel worse, attending these trainings and learning more about this than you did before you came to them. Okay. And knowledge is power. And that is everything today when we're learning about health. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And the beautiful thing, Jennifer, is that you're here, you're learning, and you're getting more information. And that is the most important part. So is working out bad or helpful? Both. It's actually both. Dee, so come back, because I'm going to cover all of that. I'm going to talk about my own nightmares with it. And again, I've helped hundreds of clients. I actually tried to niche down on thyroid at the very beginning of my business, because I understood it so well. I'm like, well, I need to niche into thyroid, helping people with thyroid. But then when I did that, I realized I was shutting other people out that had sex hormone problems, iron and metabolic problems with mineral, all of that. So I just opened it up to helping everyone, and realized that so many people were at the very beginning, the cusp of having thyroid problems. And we were able to recognize what could be leading up to that and actually avoid it altogether. So it's all important. Everything is important. All right. So let me take one more look at the Q&A one more time, and then we'll hang it up. Do I know of any natural supplements that can act the same way as armor? It may come to the point where doctors won't prescribe synthetic means of armor. Yeah, I'm going to be sharing information that I've got that's up to date on that. I've got 2 different products that I'm looking at, and that I've actually got some personal experience with. So I'll share those as we get into supplementation, medication, explaining what medications might be helpful, which ones won't be, what happened with me. I went on, I'm kind of a guinea pig, and I've done a lot of different things. So I can speak to a lot of different medications, natural, synthetic, being off of it completely, all of those things. So I'm going to cover all of that. I promise, Sandy, I'll go into all of it. Jennifer says, this is actually my husband, who I suspected has Hashimoto's and now seen symptoms of Graves and refuses to get tested. Well, you know what, Jennifer, you can, again, boundaries, right? Because each person is responsible for their own body. But, you can set the boundary up of this, I want you around for the rest of our lives together, however long that might be. And if that means getting ahead of something that could potentially cause worse problems down the road, wouldn't it be worth it just to do a real quick lab on that and make sure that you're good, right? So I've had conversations about this type of thing with people who are in denial that anything could be wrong as well, and it has led to problems down the road that could have been avoided. I was one of those people. So you can share my story with him. I'm happy for you to do that. And just let him know that, 10 years later, I had nodules on my thyroid. I was absolutely exhausted. I suffered a miscarriage, infertility, hair, not hair loss, but hair thinning, like my hair was no longer healthy, my moods, I mean, all of that stuff. So please feel free to share the story if it helps to nudge him towards getting labs. I'm also going to share lab resources where you don't even have to go to an actual doctor to get them done. So all kinds of great things coming your way for the training. So please make sure you guys come back. Okay. Thanks so much for being here and for sharing this great information. Again, if you want to reach out personally for the interview, Carmen Hunter at protonmail.com. I'm going to include the link for the guide if you want to purchase the guide. Let me drop it in here for you guys. It's this guide that we're going over. If you purchase it now, we send the update out once it's done, or you can wait until we get the update done. It's up to you if you want to get started right away. I'll drop it in for you. And there we go. You can grab it. And it says, I have my husband on a natural supplement for his Hashimotos. Tested in for which one he needs. Karen, you probably did kinesiology or some muscle testing with it. That's a great way to test too, to see what someone's tolerance would be to a medication. So we can talk about that too. I had that done as well. So, all right, you guys, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. And I hope to see you next Wednesday. If you know anyone that would benefit from this training, please bring them in. They'll get all of the replays, even if they miss this one right here, and they come for the next one and the next one. They're going to get this series of trainings all together, so they're not missing anything. It just take them a little time to catch up. All right, have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.